What is going on, guys? We're going to be doing a little throwback today. Now, just like last video, I'm going to let you enjoy some gameplay in the background while I do another quick overview on what this channel is all about. Basically, what we're going to be doing is taking games from our past and see how they hold up today. The main goal of this channel is to find games that people haven't played in years and discuss the good, the bad, and everything in between. Now, my goal for this channel is to be posting a new video every single week with some YouTube shorts in between there. I appreciate all the love and views that I've gotten so far, and I can promise you I've been working on my knowledge about editing and video making in the meantime. Well, let's get right into it. If you didn't watch my last YouTube short where I give a sneak peek at this week's game, or you haven't guessed already, today we're going to be playing Aliens Colonial Marines. Yeah, that's right. Now let me give you guys some background on the relationship that this game and I have. I got my very first PC in the summer of 2013. I remember going to Best Buy with all the money I saved up and buying an all-in-one desktop computer. Back then, even being a teenager, I had no knowledge of PCs. I asked the salesman if the PC could run Diablo 3, Warhammer 40k, Dawn of War 2, and of course, Aliens Colonial Marines. And he told me yes. Well, later on I found out that Diablo and Dawn of War had no issues, but it was a struggle to run Aliens. The campaign would crash all the time, or I would get to play about 2 frames per second. Multiplayer would load, but I could barely play. I remember being so disappointed. Well, thankfully a few months later I got Aliens for the Xbox 360 and got to play it on there. Little did I know I was not that lucky, because I remember the game being full of bugs and just being terrible to play. But this is definitely a game I remember well from my past, so with all that said, let's get into it and take a look at Aliens Colonial Marines. So what is Aliens Colonial Marines? Well, it's a first-person shooter released on February 12th, 2013. So just like last time, this game might not be the oldest, but it's definitely one from my past, and I'm sure a lot of others. Aliens Colonial Marines was developed by Gearbox Software and published by Sega. It was released on PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and obviously PC. As you're about to find out why, this game never got a re-release anywhere. So why don't we just find out how Aliens Colonial Marines still holds up today. So this is going to be kind of a longer section, so just bear with me, but let's start by taking a look at the story. Set 17 weeks after the events of the movie Aliens, Aliens Colonial Marines has you, known as Corporal Christopher Winter, aboard the ship Sephora. You and your battalion of Marines are sent off to investigate the Sulaco spaceship, which is just floating in orbit. Upon entering the Sulaco, you find that it has been overrun with xenomorphs, and several of your companions are killed. Together, you, Private O'Neill, and Private Bella Clarison discover that the Weyland-Yutani Corporation has control of the Sulaco and are breeding xenomorphs so they can study and use the creatures. Later on, both ships are destroyed, but just in the nick of time, you along with several other Marines escape in a dropship and land on planet LV-426. Once you arrive, you find that Bella has been attacked by a facehugger and has a xenomorph growing inside of her. You're later ordered to travel to a nearby Weyland-Yutani facility to convince anyone that may still be alive to remove the parasite inside of Bella. Once you arrive, a medical officer with the Weyland-Yutani Corporation reveals that it's impossible to save Bella's life. In that same cutscene, Bella dies when a chestburster hatches from inside of her. Following this, you rescue a prisoner who is confirmed to be Corporal Dwayne Hicks. It's found out that Weyland-Yutani boarded the Sulaco prior to its arrival at Fiora 161. Hicks was then captured by the Weyland-Yutani Corp aboard the Sulaco and interrogated. You also find out from Hicks that a ship capable of faster-than-light travel is at the research facility. This ship would allow you and your crew to escape from LV-426. Later on, you assault the Weyland-Yutani Corp research facility to capture the ship. Just prior to reaching the ship, it leaves. Captain Cruz then crashes the dropship into the ship, causing it to crash into a hangar bay. Upon reaching the hangar bay, you run into the Xenomorph Queen. Captain Cruz then sacrifices himself and launches his now crippled dropship into the Queen, presumably killing them both. You confront Weyland, where he is later executed. Turns out in the end that Weyland was actually an android, and this is where the game ends. Whew, that was kind of a long one compared to Diablo 3, wasn't it? Well, I figured I would give it a shot of explaining the story a little bit more so that way all of you can make your own judgments on whether the story holds up today. Now keep in mind, I played through this game twice within the past couple of weeks in order to make this video. I've definitely seen worse stories, especially from the Aliens universe. Looking at you, Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. But overall, it wasn't the greatest story. I found it very hard to get attached to any of the characters due to their awful dialogue. Most of the dialogue just feels forced and uncomfortable. I just don't think that some of the voice actors for the game were all that great. Honestly, though, that might be due to the script that they were given. I think the story could use a lot of changes, though with some of the games that come out today, this seems about what I would expect anymore. It sucks to say that, but some games are just being released with poor stories. So, how does Aliens Colonial Marines hold up today when it comes to the story? It's not the worst story I played through, but it definitely needs improvement. I don't see the story as being the reason why this game is going to hold you back from playing it. You can definitely feel like a drag at times, but before the story is finished, you're going to want to stop playing for a whole other reason, which leads me to the next section. This is going to be gameplay. I'm just going to cover everything in this section, so be ready for a long one. This game is honestly one of the worst handling games that I've played in quite a while. The amount of bugs that are still in this game after over 10 years is insane. I know that somewhere out there there's a patch to fix the bugs that this game is riddled with, but I'm trying to play through these games as they were when they were released. I mean, most of us probably played this on release before a modder made a fix for the AI in 2017, right? I'm sure very little people have touched the game since then. The most pressing bugs that I have found were enemies just simply standing there staring at you and not attacking. But I also had several instances of areas where I became soft locked and had to reset to previous checkpoints, like you can see in this clip. Due to the bugs, most of the time the enemies pose no real threat whatsoever. But there are instances where the aliens are so buggy and basically teleporting everywhere that you just instantly die. Speaking of aliens, they are some of the worst enemies in any video game ever. When I think of good aliens games, I think of Alien vs. Predator 2010. It's one of my favorite games of all times, and I just don't understand why a game that came out 3 years earlier has better alien mechanics than this game. The aliens in Aliens vs. Predator 2010 were a genuine threat, and you could always feel a slight terror when playing through the human campaign. I do have to say, the only thing that saves the aliens as a whole are the lurkers. They're a subset of the aliens that stalk around the player and will jump out at you from hidden places, including vents. I think that these enemies were great to play against and would lead you on a hunt to just find one alien that constantly moves around and stalks you, waiting for the perfect opportunity to attack. The second type of enemy in the game is the Wayland Yutani grunts. Overall, they're terrible. Again, they don't pose any kind of threat even on higher levels. Most of the time, they're just standing there staring at you.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
They do little to no damage at all and have such poor AI that they're even worse to fight than the aliens themselves. There's a bunch of different varieties of grunts, but basically they're all the same except for different guns and larger amounts of health. Now, later in the game is when it starts to get a little bit better. They combine the two factions, and you can see the aliens and the Wayland grunts fighting, and honestly, it's kind of enjoyable to see. You can be fighting a grunt and watch an alien start to approach them, and the grunt will shift his fire and focus on the alien. The interaction that the two factions have is pretty cool, and those are definitely some of the best missions in the game. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that the combat is fun, but just slightly more enjoyable than sections where you're fighting just one faction. So the most important question to ask when you're playing a first-person shooter is, what are you using to fight the enemies in this game? Well, I'm glad you asked, because the short answer is the pulse rifle and the pump shotgun. You have a decently good-sized arsenal of weapons to use against the enemies, including pistols, two forms of shotguns, a DMR, submachine gun, and obviously the pulse rifle. But you'll almost never find ammo for anything but the pulse rifle and the pump shotgun. The only ammo that is consistently at checkpoints is shotgun ammo and pulse rifle ammo. The only way that I've found to get more ammo for your other weapons is from getting small amounts from killed Wayland grunts. This doesn't even give enough ammo to actually use these guns, seeing as it takes almost a full magazine to actually kill anything, even on normal difficulty. I can't say that this is even really a bad thing, seeing as how most of the guns feel like you're shooting an airsoft gun. Now, the AR has so much recoil that it's unusable, and the submachine gun feels like you're shooting staples at the enemy. Honestly though, the gun that feels good to use in this game is the pump shotgun. It feels like it has some weight to it, and it gives solid feedback when shooting it. That's right, not even the pulse rifle feels good to shoot. There's no feedback, and the sway on it makes it unusable to use unless you're 5 feet away from what you're shooting at. It's disappointing, seeing as the pulse rifle is up there with Han Solo's blaster and the super shotgun from Doom in terms of the best guns from media ever. Seriously, please don't even get me started on the power loader. How do you mess up one of the most alien things ever? You just punch this giant alien over and over again with the power loader. I mean, you honestly just have to punch it for 10 minutes straight, and it seemed as though it would never end. How do you go from this? Oh wait, that's the wrong power loader fight, but still better than Aliens Colonial Marines. I mean, how do you go from this and then compare it to this? I will give this to Aliens Colonial Marines though. They have special weapons that you can find that are signature weapons from the movies. While they don't really change much to the guns themselves, they're still pretty cool to see and use. Oh yeah, and the smart gun still kicks ass, and that's all I've got to say about that. One thing I found really cool about the campaign was the fact that you gain experience that translates over to the multiplayer. While literally nobody is playing this game and there's a 0% chance that you'll ever find an online match, this does have uses in the single player. Leveling up gives you points that you can spend on new attachments for your weapons. Some of these are actually pretty cool. You can switch from regular grenade launchers to firebomb launchers and stun guns. You can add red dot sights for faster ADS or laser sights for more accurate hip firing. I think that this is a great feature and can switch up the gameplay a little bit by making the guns feel new, even if most of them do suck. Now let me tell you about the best part of the campaign, the sewer level. Never would I have thought I would say this, but I loved the sewer level. I mean, if you look at the sewer level in literally any game, it's always the worst. Just look at Blighttown in Dark Souls. But in Aliens Colonial Marines, this is the most interesting level and definitely the best in the game. You can find yourself in a dark sewer with lurker aliens everywhere. This part kinda had me on edge the entire time. You have your motion tracker, but with the lurkers, it basically does little more than let you know that you're about to shit your pants. Following this is a stealth portion that heavily reminded me of Aliens Isolation. You're traveling through murky water with a bunch of alien husks everywhere. Coming over the radio, O'Neill lets you know that some of the husks are still alive. You find yourself trying to avoid every husk because of fear that one of them is going to come to life and just fuck you up. You have to crouch the entire time and avoid everything that makes noise as you have no guns to defend yourself, and if these aliens hear you, you're dead. So you travel through the sewers activating these generators to draw in the aliens, just so you can get around and regroup with O'Neill. Honestly, I was kind of surprised that there was any redeeming factors to this game whatsoever, but this has become one of my favorite missions in video games, even though for the most part I'm not a huge fan of stealth in video games. Just because there's one redeeming factor this game does not mean much, seeing as how the rest of the game is mediocre at best. Let's talk about the absolute worst part of this game, the ending. You find yourself on the FTL ship to get off the planet, trapped in an airlock with the alien queen. The premise is to flip a switch 3 times, then release a crane loader to launch the queen out of the ship. Sounds easy, right? Absolutely not. Now, I don't know if I'm just dog water at the game or what, but this thing constantly knows where you are and makes it difficult to beat this mission. You need to run the queen around to the opposite side of the room and just make a break for the switch and pray that you can reach it before this thing fucks you up. After doing this 3 times for what seemed like 15 minutes, you just need to reach a final switch and release the loader to launch the queen out of the ship. Once you reach it, the queen just stands there in front of you, happily waiting for you to kill it. Now this is followed by a cutscene where it turns out the queen lived, and Captain Cruz then sacrifices himself to launch it out of the ship. This was the absolute worst part of the game for me. It kind of just killed the little enjoyment that I had while playing through the game. I have to say, the only redeeming factor about this mission was that it meant it was finally over. Wait, what? You mean I need to play through this game again to get all the collectibles and unlock all the attachments? Fuck it, fine. So, of course, I played through the game again, and I can promise you it did not get better. I'd say I can give you a definitive answer that Aliens Colonial Marines absolutely does not hold up today. It was bad when it came out, and it remains bad today. I mean, this game was so bad that it literally had lawsuits against it for false advertising. So with all that said, I don't think you're missing much by skipping this one. Didn't really bring back any memories from my childhood, even though it was one of the first games I had on PC. I can proudly say this game is going to be uninstalled and never played again. Well, guys, that wraps everything up for this throwback. I want to thank everyone who stayed and watched to the end. I hope that the quality of this video was a bit better for everyone because I've definitely been working on bettering my editing. It would mean a lot if you would all like and share the video. If you like this video, you should definitely subscribe because I have a lot more planned for the future and they're only going to get better from here. Anyway, guys, until the next throwback.